Hi everyone, and welcome to my visual guide for the Ankou's Asylum. This guide is specifically aimed at Templars who are tanking, but it also shows how the dungeon is cleared in general. Before we dive in, I recommend checking out the description of this video. There I will post if any changes have been made to the dungeon after this guide was released. Let's start with the gear that we need for tanking. As our armor set, we want the level 180 tank set. There's simply no better option. It provides you with a lot of HP, PvE damage reduction and block chance. If you don't have access to the set, you can also use the level 150 set instead. This will also work, but it is a bit worse. I strongly recommend not to use the level 120 set or any other kind of set, as these will simply not provide enough protection. When it comes to upgrading the set, a lot of people ask if the set needs to be plus 10. This is not needed in my opinion. You can easily reach the maximum block chance with a plus 8 or even a plus 7 set, so the only difference that will matter is the little bit of extra HP you get from having your set plus 10. It certainly helps. At plus 10 you get 20% HP, but you get only 10% at plus 8. But seeing how expensive it is to get your set from plus 8 to plus 10, this is some of the most expensive HP you can possibly get. You will probably get tankier spending this money somewhere else. The extra 10% HP also won't increase your actual HP by 10%. I will go over how that works later. Upgrading your suit with fire provides you with a lot better value, as you only need to upgrade your suit, and it provides you with damage reduction for each upgrade level. When it comes to suit piercing, you will want to use HP cards. This is better than defense, because defense is a lot more effective against a lot of small hits, while the most dangerous monsters in this dungeon deal fewer hits but really big ones. If you take 5k damage 20 times, reducing this to 4k helps a lot. But if you take 3 hits of 30 damage, then reducing these hits to 29k doesn't make a very big impact. For a weapon, we are good as long as we have any tank weapon. But there's still some differences, so I'm going to rank them from best to worst. I consider the Lusaka axe plus a shield with wind resistance the best possible setup. They provide the highest possible damage reduction, because the axe comes with reduced incoming damage taken, and the wind resistance reduces the damage you take from all monsters, except from the Ankou itself. Having a shield also vastly improves your defense. If you can't afford the Lusaka axe, the bloody obsidian axe is also an alternative. It's a little bit worse, but it is a lot cheaper. You could also go with the bloody obsidian sword. That one does not come with reduced damage taken, but it does come with 10% block chance, meaning that reaching max block is a lot easier. Of course you could do the same thing with your shield and take a shield with block chance over a shield with wind resistance. That means that you have a very easy time capping your block rate. But you will be a bit less tanky than you would otherwise have been with wind resistance. A Lusaka one-handed sword is the worst one-handed option, since it offers neither the reduced incoming damage nor the block chance. Weirdly enough, this one is actually worse than the bloody obsidian counterpart, as that one has block chance. Two-handed tank weapons are also viable to use, but they're a little bit worse in my opinion. They do not provide you with a defense boost of a shield, and they also don't allow you to get wind resistance. But the Celestial Edge is still a great weapon however. It provides you with the most HP of any tank weapon, and it comes with block and reduced incoming damage. At the moment the Maras deal non-elemental damage with their area attacks, so wind resistance isn't effective against them anyway. Until that is fixed, this remains a top tier choice despite being a two-handed weapon. But the Lusaka and bloody obsidian weapons make you get either block or reduced incoming damage, and not both. There's also a third option, and that is to use a coral weapon to help your team do some damage. With the tank weapons your AoE damage is completely insignificant no matter what you do, but you can deal some AoE damage with coral weapons through water bomb. This is by no means a necessity, and even if you do decide to use this, you will not increase the clear speed of your team drastically. So it's entirely optional. If you do decide to use one of these, I recommend to get a weapon with lifesteal. This will make you drain HP from mobs constantly, and that makes up for the lack of tank stats on the coral weapon itself. All 4 coral weapons work, but the one-handed versions have a slight advantage due to them allowing you to use a shield. I really recommend that if you get a coral weapon, you also get a tank weapon to go along with it. You should use the corals as an extra. It's not a replacement for getting a tank weapon, because there is one mob in the dungeon that deals so much damage that you will want all the HP and damage reduction that you can get. And one more thing to keep in mind is that you should pay extra attention to your block chance if you're using a coral weapon, as you may have less block with a coral weapon and it's still very important to reach the cap. I will go over how to cap block chance later. And what should you upgrade your weapon with? Well, Not all that much. Regular upgrades and elemental upgrades don't make any difference here. The only exception is when you make your weapon ultimate, as it will allow you to get some awakenings on it. In that case, our best awakenings are lifesteal, block chance, HP, and stamina. For coral weapons, of course, PvE damage and attack is also nice, but you really want lifesteal on those as well. For weapon piercing cards, we want land cards to provide us with stamina. Electricity cards are also an option if you need more dexterity to cap your block chance. And if costs are a concern, also consider here that the last piercing slots are very expensive. If you want to run on a budget, consider using only 6 or 8 piercing slots. For the ultimate jewel sockets, our best option is the defense rune. But the overall impact of the rune is quite small, especially for how expensive it is. If you're going with regular jewels, then stamina jewels are better than HP, but you might be able to use both. Then on to accessories. Your best option here is to use a defender set. It provides you with a lot of HP, a lot of defense and a lot of block. Its upgrade level is not very important. There is very little difference between a +0 and a +3 defender set. You will basically be spending billions of penya for a few extra points of defense and stamina. If you are really short on cash, you don't really need the Defender's Gore necklace. The set bonus for getting the 5th defender piece is 5% magic resistance and 10% critical resistance, and neither of these matter in this dungeon. While some rumors have been going around that some of the monsters in this dungeon deal magic damage, it's actually not true and they all deal physical damage, and the seraphs in your party will constantly cast Holy Guard on you to provide you with 100% critical resistance, so there's no real point in having any more of that either. You can probably also tank this dungeon without a defender set, in which case you would use stamina rings and speedos, but you will be considerably less tanky. If you are doing this, make sure that the rest of your gear is very good to make up for this. Then on to pets. On your pet you simply want to get as much HP as possible. Pets that grant flat HP are usually better for this than stamina pets. Pets with higher HP values are always better, of course. If you really want to and you run with a team that kills all 50 Mars in one pool, then I recommend bringing a Griffin pet as well. The level of this pet does not matter, you will use it only to graze after your guard skill runs out. You can even sell this pet after its energy is up and buy a new one. The Coral Cloak is our best option with 5% speed and 200 HP. But stamina cloaks are really good as well, and they're especially worth using if you're already using your Coral Cloak for your 1v1 setup, meaning that you have a different fashion blessing on it. Then for your fashion set you want some speed, and for the extra stat from the demon blessings, your best options are more speed, melee block chance, stamina, or critical chance. Speed helps you get through the dungeon faster. Melee block is very good if you don't reach maximum block chance with the rest of your equipment. In that case, the blessings can save you 8 stat points for each 1% melee block. Critical chance is the final alternative. While attacking the monuments, you will be taking a lot of damage, which means that you might have to use your tank set, and your critical chance will be low. For your housed NPCs, you will want to use the 5% speed and the 3% PvE damage reduction NPC in your house. PvE damage is capped at 30%, so using 2 at once with a level 180 PvE set is a little bit overkill. If you're also dealing a fair bit of damage throughout the dungeon, you can also take the 3% PvE damage NPC. The 10% HP guild ship bonus is also great, but this option is not accessible to everyone, of course. Premium items that you could use are the low or normal grilled eels, low or normal defense upcuts, and any power up that gives HP, stamina, or parry. And you can also use attack upcut stones if you're dealing damage. Whether you will need these premiums depends on the rest of your gear, of course. But ideally you don't need to use too many. Grilled eels in particular are really expensive when you use them frequently. In this gear section, I've given all viable options for your equipment. It's good to realize that while the cheapest options do work, if you get the cheapest option in every slot, it might not work. It's hard to give minimum requirements, as having really good gear in some slots can compensate for having worse gear in other slots. On to our stat build. We will want to put dexterity until our block rate is at its maximum, and then we want to put the rest of our points into stamina. But what exactly is max block chance? To get the max block chance, count up all your block and melee block from your gear and buffs. Then add 8 points of dexterity for each point that this number is removed from 75. So for example, I have 14 block from my equipment set, 10 block from my set upgrades, 10 more block from my defender set, 20 block from cat's reflex, and 2% from my fashion blessings. That makes 56. 75 minus 56 is 19. 19 times 8 is 152, so I need at least 152 decks to reach maximum block chance. Please note that this number is different from the number in your stat window. This is because the maximum amount of block you gain from dexterity is flexible, and it depends on the difference between your dexterity and the dexterity of your attacker. The stat window always assumes that we will have a lot more dexterity than a monster that's attacking us, but the monsters in this dungeon have up to 300 dexterity, and we won't have that much. The method I described calculates your block in the worst case scenario, so you will always reach the maximum block chance using this method. If you don't want to calculate it yourself, you can also add dexterity until the number in your stat window reaches 85%, because this number can be off by 10% at most, so at 85% you're always safe. But I recommend calculating it manually so you don't put more dexterity than you need to. Some of you might wonder if the dex build from Cursed Wilds is good here as well, but I'm afraid that it's not. You mainly wanted this build for parry, and parrying the attacks of the monsters in the Ankou's Asylum is a lot harder. You need more dexterity for it. And the final two monsters in this dungeon deal a lot of damage through their special attacks, and these are targeted on the ground. Attacks that are targeted on the ground can't be parried at all. Whether they hit or not is purely determined based on whether you stood in the circle or not. Parry and hit rate have no effect on this. Alright, so I've discussed block and parry, but here are some quick notes on the other tank stats. For a minimum I recommend 100k HP, but a little more is always welcome. Our HP increases by 0.4 per stamina points per level, meaning that if we gain 10 stamina at level 170, we gain 10 times 0.4 times 170 is 680 HP. This is then further multiplied by our percentage HP increases. Note that all percentage HP increases all add up to one multiplier, they don't multiply each other. So if you have 10k HP and gain plus 50% HP, you will have 15k HP. But if you then gain another plus 50% HP, you will have 20k and not 22.5k. Because the second 50% is still based on the initial 10k HP that you had. Defense reduces the damage you take from physical hits by a flat amount. All damage in this dungeon is physical damage. However, block and defense together can't reduce a hit by more than 90%. And since block is so effective at reducing damage, defense doesn't do anything versus blocked hits in most cases. But the hits that you don't block are usually the most dangerous ones, so it's still good to have. And due to it being a flat reduction, it's better against many smaller hits than it is against one really big hit. Next up is wind resistance. Wind resistance reduces the amount of damage you take from wind monsters. You can increase this by upgrading your suit with fire and having a wind resistance awakening on your shield. Upgrading your suit with fire also makes your defense more effective against wind monsters. PvE damage reduction. PvE damage reduction reduces the amount of damage you take from all monsters. This is limited to a maximum of 30%. You'll get most of this from your tank armor set, but you can get a little bit more from the NPCs in your house. Reduced incoming damage. Reduced incoming damage reduces the damage you take from all sources. Normally, this is capped at minus 50%. But if you use the last one standing skill, you can exceed this limit and reach up to minus 100% damage, at which points all attacks deal just one single point of damage to you. Magic resistance. Magic resistance reduces the magic damage you take by a percentage. But as mentioned earlier, all damage in this dungeon is physical, so this doesn't do anything for you. Last up is critical resistance. Critical resistance offers a chance to turn a critical hit back into a normal hit. A Ringmaster's Holy Guard buff provides you with 100% of this, meaning that you can't take any critical hits. While this stat is effective by itself, since you're already getting 100%, there's no point in getting any more, since at that point you can't take any critical damage anyway. On to skills. Which skills you need to max depends a little bit on which weapon you use, but let's start with the skills that you will always want to max. Guard is a skill that grants minus 40% incoming damage taken for 20 seconds. This comes at the cost of some attack, but that's not really a problem here since your main purpose is to tank. You will want to use this whenever you start a pool. Pain Reflection reflects damage back to the mobs. While the damage itself is insignificant, it does also help with keeping aggro, and it can trigger Water Bomb if you're using a coral weapon. Call of Fury is an AoE spell that compels every mob it hits to attack you instead of your team members. This is also commonly called taunt or provoked by players. Maelstrom Strike. Maelstrom Strike is a new AoE Templar skill, and definitely the best one you have access to. You will want to get this with a mastery that increases its range, as this increases the chance of the Morrigans attacking you instead of your party members after they spawn clones. Up next are the passive skills Increased HP Recovery and Enhanced HP Recovery. Both significantly increase the amount of healing you receive from spells, food and lifesteal. Increased HP Recovery is always active. Enhanced Healing Recovery is only active after your health has fallen below 25%, but it stays active for an entire hour after that. I recommend deliberately letting your HP drop below 25 at the start of the dungeon, more on that later. Undying is an excellent skill that allows you to survive a fatal hit 3 times. Hits that would otherwise kill you now leave you with 10% of your max health. After all 3 stacks are used up, you will regenerate them after a 10-minute cooldown. Enhanced Physical Defense is a skill that grants 20% defense for 1 minute after your HP falls below 50%. This is not something we will try to activate on purpose, but it's nice to have. This does prevent you from taking the Enhanced Magic Resistance skill, but as established earlier, magic resistance is not useful in this dungeon. Then a skill that's currently not worth using, but might become good in the future. Last One Standing with damage reduction grants a whopping minus 88% incoming damage. While this is great, you will lose aggro from monsters if you use it for the full duration of 20 seconds. You should be able to cancel it before the full duration is over to prevent this, but at the moment, you can't always cancel it when you want to. Once this gets fixed, consider using this at Maras, but cancel it after 10 to 15 seconds to prevent aggro loss. If you're tanking with a one-handed weapon, you will also want to max protection and shield mastery. Both provide you with a significant defense boost. With a two-handed setup, I also recommend maxing Pain Dealer. This inflicts a debuff that reduces a monster's defense and makes them take 5% increased damage for 15 seconds. This is really good when you're in a group, because the debuff also increases the damage that your party members deal by 5%, which can really add up. And then you want to just max the skills that you're using for your 1v1 damage setup. Alright, we're about to go into the dungeon. But before we start, there's still a few things we should do to prepare. The first thing is checking our settings. There are 2 very important ones for running a dungeon. The first one is the special effects toggle. You want to turn this off while your team is killing the trash mobs. Otherwise, everything might be very hard to see through all the skill effects. However, you want to turn this back on while fighting the Ankou itself. This is because some of its special attacks will also be hidden if you have this setting off, meaning that you could walk into damage without realizing that it's there. And the second one is the target pets toggle. You want to keep this off. Clicking on the party's pets instead of the monsters can cause unnecessary deaths, and it's very important that you're able to quickly select monsters when you're AoEing the Morrigans. Another thing to consider is which curses you want to run. Curses are modifiers that have 1 positive effect and 1 negative effect on all the monsters in a dungeon. There are 6 in total. Let's go over all of them. Curse 1 is Phantom Pain. This gives monsters a 40% chance to deal their damage twice, but it also increases their drop rate by 10%. This is by far the most dangerous curse. While experienced tanks can run this, it also increases the likelihood of the rest of your party dying. If you're confident in both your gear and your party, you can activate this. But it should be the first curse that you drop if you think your group will struggle. After all, the Ankou will have a way higher drop chance if you get to him faster, so if you have to fight a lower tier Ankou because you took this curse, it might end up being a net negative for the drop rate. More on the different versions of Ankous later. What is interesting about this curse is that the second hit that monsters get is always categorized as an auto attack, even if the original attack is not. This means that you can block this hit and reduce the damage with elemental resistance, even if the original hit was unblockable and non-elemental. This makes it not as bad as it may seem against the Maras in particular. Curse 2 is Shade's Boost. And it's a curse you always will want to take. It increases monster movement speed by 20% and it also makes them take 5% more damage. The monsters dying faster is always good, but the speed bonus is arguably a benefit as well. This makes the monsters easier to round up and you'll spend less time waiting on them to come to you. Since there are only benefits to this curse, there's no reason not to take it. Curse 3 is Dagger from Within. It increases monsters' critical chance by 15%, but also makes them give 10% more experience. This curse is not really worth taking here. The monsters in this dungeon barely give any experience, so increasing it by 10% hardly matters. And while you as the tank will always get Holy Guard from the Seraph players, it also increases the chances of the rest of your party dying to random damage, so it's not really worth it. The fourth one is the Curse of the Drowned Rangda. This curse increases the attack of monsters by 20%, but it also makes them take 20% more damage. This is overall a very good curse that I recommend you always take. While you do take more damage, the monsters dying faster also means that you will need to tank them for a shorter period of time, and it means that you will get more value out of temporary defensive skills. Going through the dungeon faster also increases your chances of getting a higher tier Ankou with better drop rates. And one monster type is capable of healing itself, which means that killing it fast is very important. The fifth curse is Shade's Adrenaline. It increases monster attack speed by 30% and also increases their drop rate by 7%. Overall, this is not a very dangerous curse. The most dangerous attacks in this dungeon are the skills monsters use, and those are not affected by attack speed, so this curse won't give you much trouble. The sixth curse is Rise's Assistance. It boosts monster experience by 20%, but monsters will now recover their HP over time. This is by far the worst curse you can possibly take, and you should never activate it. Not only is the experience that monsters give in this dungeon completely insignificant either way, the monsters recovering their HP will increase the time it takes to kill all monsters by a lot. And if your party dies, everything, including the final boss, will recover to full HP while you're respawning. The community generally refers to the curses just by their number, so if someone mentions running curses 1, 2, 4, 5, they mean Phantom Pain, Shade's Boost, Curse of the Drowned Rangda, and Shade's Adrenaline. So to summarize, I recommend running curses 1, 2, 4, 5 when you have good gear and are running with an experienced team. If you're less confident, drop curse 1 and just run 2, 4, 5 instead. And never activate curse 3 and especially curse 6. Using dungeon curses costs extra dungeon coins. These extra coins are only paid by the first person to open the dungeon. The rest doesn't need to select them or pay the dungeon coins. It is customary on my server, Totemia, that the person who pays for the dungeon curses gets to open the pet cages. But this is not a hard rule, and it may be different on other servers or even in other communities. Now that the dungeon is open, we can go in. But there's one more thing we should do to prepare. As mentioned in the skills section, the enhanced HP recovery skill triggers once you fall below 25% HP, but it stays on for the entire hour afterwards. When we enter the dungeon, we want to fall below 25% HP before we even start to pull the mobs. There's 3 ways to do this. The fastest way is to enter the dungeon with a very low amount of HP. You could for example go in without your tank gear and without your tank stat page, and then switch to your tank setup once you're inside. Keep in mind that there's a 15-minute cooldown on swapping stat pages, so if you're already on your tank page, do not swap out before entering, as you will need to wait 15 minutes before you can swap back again. Another method of doing this is by using Last One Standing. This skill continuously drains your HP and will leave you with a sliver of health after it's been fully used. This takes 20 seconds though, so it's not preferable to the first method. Your healers also should know not to heal you while you're doing this and not to buff you, because if they heal you, you won't drop to low enough HP, and the skill has a 60-second cooldown, so you can't try again without wasting a lot of time. And if they buff you, your max HP goes up, which means you will now take more damage from Last One Standing and you can actually die from it. For that same reason, you should also not swap gear while it's active. The third method is to just unequip all your gear and re-equip it. That should put you at quite low HP, but probably not low enough. So you will need one of the nearby monsters to hit you a few times and drop your HP further. But this is a really inconvenient method. Your healers will likely start healing you as well, because they don't know what you're trying to do. Then a tip from another Templar. Since both skills that increase your received healing scale with int, you could start this dungeon off on an int page with int rings to maximize your incoming healing. Once the skill is active, the increased healing from an int will stay until the buff expires, so you can switch out immediately after having used it. But this is a lot of trouble and you would waste a stat page doing this. It's something you could do for extra survivability, but it's probably not worth it. Once everyone's buffed, we can really start the dungeon. The methods I will demonstrate here show how to clear the dungeon in the least amount of time possible to maximize your chances to get to the boss in less than 25 minutes. But whether this actually succeeds will also depend on how much damage your team deals and how many party members die during the run. We will do our best to clear it as fast as possible, but the outcome will be different every run. Here's a few general things to keep in mind for the entire dungeon. Go fast, but not too fast. Your healers need to be able to cast healing spells on you while you are collecting monsters. If you run at full speed, or even use your mobility skills, the healers won't be able to keep up. Start zigzagging through the corridors if you notice that your healers are falling behind. But do not stop entirely, as you do not want the monsters to pile on you without the healers present. The aggro range of monsters here is way bigger than it is outside of a dungeon. This is both an advantage to you and a disadvantage to your party, as it means that you can collect mobs a lot easier, but it also increases the chances of your party members drawing aggro on accident. So always make sure to pull aggro from every monster that you pass. Even if you don't need them, they might start attacking your party if you don't. And for that same reason, always go back a bit in the direction that you came from, because the aggro range of monsters is so big that your party members might draw aggro from monsters that are wandering around. And if they catch aggro at an unfortunate moment, your entire party might wipe. Always use guard once you're done pulling. All the monsters will hit you at once, and they will all do it at full damage, because none of them are stunned or debuffed yet. Never move during a pull. If a monster is not in range to attack you, and it takes damage from a party member, it will start targeting the party member instead of you. And for that same reason, don't use Maelstrom Strike or Power Stomp before all the monsters caught up to you and have stopped moving. If you stun them while they are not directly next to you, they could start targeting your party once their stun is over. Don't use Rage until you're at the final boss, it makes you take more damage. If you use it by accident, you can disable it by unequipping your weapon. If your party dies in a spawn of monsters, it's best to leave the party and relog. That way you will appear outside and you can rejoin the party and re-enter the dungeon. It's much better to start over with everyone alive than it is to rest and buff everyone during the pull. And lastly, don't stress too much when you have a bad run. Even if you do everything right and are very tanky, sometimes you just take an unfortunate amount of damage or your healers die at the crucial moment. Not every run can be perfect, and it's not always our fault. Once you start the dungeon, the first pull that you need to do is the Orcus. You need to kill 45 of these. Orcus are pretty unremarkable monsters. They only attack with basic attacks and they do not have any special abilities. Once you enter the first corridor, the first monument room is directly on your right. You want to grab every monster in front of it and then go a little bit further until you're about here. Then move back a bit so that the rest of the Orcus won't accidentally come over. After the Orcus are defeated, the first death monument will spawn in room 1. I'm only going over how to deal with the monuments once, as all the following monuments will be exactly the same as this one. Monuments are fire type mini bosses with 400 million HP. They inflict a poison on their main target, fire a variety of area attacks, and occasionally spawn a Nergal. These Nergals are quite strong, so you should taunt them immediately so they won't kill your party. Before you approach, make sure that there aren't any other monsters in the room that can target your party members, as this will happen quite frequently. Draw their attention if there are any. Always use Call of Fury when you start fighting the monument, and use Pain Dealer for your team if you're able to. You can hit these monuments in your DPS gear, but this is quite risky. You should stand still as much as possible, as walking away will cause the Nergal to target your party members, so you can't run out of the area attacks. If you're in a party with a lot of mentalists, you can opt to constantly use Earth Divider. This inflicts a debuff that counts as a disable, which increases the mentalist's damage. And if you're using tank gear, you won't be dealing a lot of damage yourself anyway. The monuments can only die if the last Nergal that they spawned has fallen below 30% HP. So your party should focus the last one that spawned. You can get really unlucky with this. The monument can spawn a constant stream of new Nergals, which means you have to start over, and it makes it really hard to see which Nergal is the last one, as they will all stack on top of each other. But it might also not spawn a single Nergal before it is defeated. There is another way of tackling the monument fight as a tank, a strategy that involves just standing still at maximum range. The idea is that using this strategy, the monument will use fewer area attacks, as you, its main target, are too far away. When doing this, you keep yourself in place using Maelstrom Strike, and you use Taunt when a Nergal spawns. This gives the rest of the party a much easier time to attack, as they have fewer area attacks to deal with. However, there's also a downside. There's a much higher chance of a Nergal turning on one of your party members, as the Nergal now need to walk over to you after you taunt them, which means they can re-aggro before they reach you. You also can't use Pain Dealer or deal any damage yourself. After destroying a monument, your whole party will receive one random buff or debuff. These roll a random stat and then increase or decrease it by a set amount. But there are no debuffs that will drastically impact your ability to tank. The nice thing about these monuments is that they drop quite a lot of sunstones, and they can also drop A cards. Once this is done, your party needs to defeat 60 Nergal. You will want to exit room 1 and head right. Draw attention of all the remaining Orcus so they won't go after your party members. Then you will arrive in a big hallway full of Nergal. You will want to pull everything here so that you can kill 60 in one single pull. Circle through the room and pull every monster until you arrive at the door of room 2. Once you pulled every monster there and are ready to turn around, use guard before you turn around and then run back to prevent too many Nergal from leaving. All the Nergal will have lined up and will hit you at once. Even really tanky Templars can die to this. And you will not have Undying here yet. This is why you should use guard before turning around. The Orcus will have lost interest and ran back to respawn, but this is not really a bad thing as you didn't need to kill any more of them anyway. After clearing the entire pool, head into room 2 and fight the second monument. After destroying monument 2, exit room 2 to the door that you did not arrive from. Here you will encounter more Nergal. Just like last time, you don't need to defeat these, but draw aggro from them anyway, so they don't attack your party. Then enter room 3 and immediately leave again through the path on the right. Here you will encounter Hell. Just like the last two monsters, these will just auto attack you and don't have any special abilities, and you only need to defeat 30 of these. Run past them while you grab aggro from every single one, then enter room 4. We want to cross this room and exit it again, but don't move there in a straight line. Take a little bit of a turn and move to the left of the room. That way you're able to get aggro from the mobs that are hiding in this corridor. And will also give your healer some time to catch up, in case they've fallen behind. Run through this corridor as well, again grabbing aggro of any hell. And then you will arrive in room 5. There, take a left turn and exit the room again. Once you pass this corner, all the hell will be placed on top of you, so I prefer to use guard here. Then grab the hell directly outside of room 5, but do not wander into the halls any further. Stop here and kill all the hell that are on you. You should have exactly 30 here. After defeating 30 hell, go back into room 5 where the third monument has now spawned and destroy it. After destroying the third monument, leave room 5 and head into the direction where you gathered the last hell. Make a path through this big open space. You don't need to draw the attention of everything here, you just need to make a path for your party to safely navigate through. Make your way through about 2/3 of this corridor, then loop back a bit and position yourself directly up against the wall. I recommend not walking all the way to the end of the corridor. If you do, then it's usually still fine, but there's a small chance that you lose too many Morrigans and you will need to backtrack later. Let all the Morrigans walk up to you and start AoEing. Morrigans are the first monster with a special ability. When their HP drops low enough, they will teleport away from you and create 2 clones of themselves. This is the same ability that the Enchanted Shaman and Guardian have. This creates a bit of a problem for the party, as the Morrigans and their clones can attack someone else after cloning. With a mastery that increases the AoE radius of Maelstrom Strike, you should be able to get the first hit on them. But this is by no means a guarantee, and you should use Call of Fury constantly to ensure that the Morrigans are attacking you. The rest of the party needs to account for this. They should equip defensive gear so they can tank some hits without dying, and they should also position themselves very closely to you. Ringmasters here should also not use Macabra, so they won't be targeted. You can also use Heart of Sacrifice on a squishy mage to increase their chances of surviving. These monsters are also the reason why it's so important to have the select pet options toggled off, as you will need to constantly click on new Morrigans. You need to kill 90 Morrigans to spawn the next monument. You will not kill 90 in this first pool, but that's okay. There's more after the next room, and you want to clear those anyway, so you don't have to deal with them at the same time as you have to deal with the Maras later. To save time here, you can consider leaving before the last ones have died. Some parties have adopted the strategy to continue to the next pool after killing 60 Morgans. This is definitely the most time efficient way, but make sure that your party knows that you're doing this and let them back away from the Morgans first. Once you're ready to move on, make your way to room 6 and draw aggro from every Morgan you run into. Enter room 6, turn right and immediately head out the other exit. There you will find more Morgans, collect them all again, turn left and stop in this corner over here and fight the Morgans the same way as you did last time. If you're aiming to kill the Mara in one pool, switch your HP pet to a Griffin as soon as the Morgan's numbers start to dwindle, so your Grace is ready when you need it to be. After killing all the Morgans here, return to room 6 to fight the 4th monument. After destroying the monument, come back here and you will find the Mara. There are 50 Mara in this hallway and you need to kill exactly 50. These are the hardest monsters in the dungeon. Mara have fairly weak auto attacks, but deal a lot of damage through their area attacks. These attacks will telegraph the location where they're being cast with these red circles. The rest of the party needs to avoid these at all costs, as they will likely die from just a single hit from them. As a tank on the other hand, we need to stand still so we don't lose aggro, so we can't dodge. These area attacks deal a high amount of damage. They can't be blocked or parried, and these spells are non-elemental, meaning that wind resistance does not reduce their damage. It's currently unclear if this is intended or a bug. Maybe in the future, these attacks might be turned into wind attacks. There are also physical damage, meaning that defense can reduce their damage, but magic defense and magic resistance does not, and the Maras also heal themselves significantly whenever they hit a player with it. The only good thing about these hits is that they can never be critical hits either. Equip your setup with the most HP and damage reduction. I strongly recommend not sacrificing your defenses to deal more damage with your coral weapon. To most people I would recommend pulling about half the room and then doing a second pull for the other half, but it is possible to AoE them all at once. This is quite risky, as you will be taking a lot of damage and the rest of your party will get barraged by these red circle attacks. Once all 50 are defeated, head into room 7 and battle the final monument of death. Once it is destroyed, gather at the exit. You will see another corridor full of Maras. You definitely don't want to fight any more of these, but you also can't ignore them, because they will follow you to the final monster you have to fight and kill you there. To make this easier on yourselves, have a ranger or a jester go first, and have them grab aggro from all the Mara here, while the rest of your party follows closely behind. The group will head into room 8, while the ranger or jester turns around and uses dark illusion to lose all the Maras once they are no longer in range of the group. They will then also head into room 8 while being invisible. If you don't have a ranger or a jester, then another party member can fulfill this role, but they will not be able to join the rest of the group again for the final AoE, as there's no way for them to get past the Mara without drawing aggro. Alright, so once you as the tank are in room 8, head out to this exit on the right and just collect whatever Ghed you run into. I usually take a few steps in this direction to pull some extra Ghed and make sure they can't aggro on the rest of my team. Then I make my way to the boss room and head left so that all the Ghed will be placed on top of me. Just don't stand too close to these pillars, as they may prevent your party from casting targeted spells on the Ghed. Taking a bit of distance from the wall is alright here. You don't need to be as close up against it as you had to be when you were killing the Morgans. You only need to kill 30 Ghed. Just like the Mara, these also attack with area attacks. These are a bit bigger, but also slower and weaker. They do inflict a nasty debuff that increases your incoming damage by 50%, but all in all they're far less threatening than the Mara. After defeating the 30 Ghed, step into the teleporter that takes you to the final boss room. But make sure that all 7 of your party members go in first, as any remaining Ghed will turn on them once you teleport. Then it's time to fight the boss the dungeon was named after, the Ankou. There are 3 versions of the Ankou: normal, blazing and demonic. To spawn the demonic Ankou, you need to make your way through a dungeon in 25 minutes or less. To spawn a blazing Ankou, you need to make your way through a dungeon in 40 minutes or less. And if you take more than 40 minutes, the normal Ankou will spawn. With each difficulty level, the Ankou will have a bit more attack and HP. But what really sets them apart is that the harder versions have more special attacks, and that these are also less telegraphed. As a tank, your role during the fight is not very different of that of the other melee classes. The only difference is that you will have to get as far underneath the boss as possible, and stay there whenever you can. This boss has no regular auto attacks. Instead, he targets the closest player with these red circles continuously. We want to be the ones baiting these, as we can tank them, and we want the rest of the party to be able to keep attacking as much as they can. I like to use all my DPS gear here, and I'm staying on my tank stat page. With my main bound set with water plus 8, I seem to be taking 38k damage at most. So long as you have 40k HP on your tank stat page, you should be fine. Do keep in mind though that when the Ankou falls below 25% HP, he will berserk and deal a lot more damage, so switch to a more defensive setup when he falls below this threshold. As long as you have undying stacks up, you can take risks though, but it might be better to switch to a more defensive setup once you run out of them. Just like the monuments, the Ankou is a fire type monster, so use water on your weapon and DPS suit. Besides this stomp, you do want to make sure to dodge every other attack that it has. A lot of these can one-shot you no matter how tanky you are, or inflict a pretty long stun. Here's a rundown of all the attacks. A meteor attack? These used to charge up fairly slow, but are now channeled at about the same speed as the basic stomp attacks. As a tank you can easily survive them, but they will stun you, so it's still better to run out of them. The bite attack. The Ankou will move forward and a red circle will appear underneath him. This attack will always one-shot you, but it can be absorbed by undying. A big melee attack that spawns smaller meteors on the side. You can easily survive this attack as a tank, but it looks a lot like the fatal bite attack, so don't get too comfortable not moving. When the Ankou scratches the ground like this, it means that he is about to charge forward. This kills everyone in front of the Ankou. And he also leaves behind a burning trail that will also kill everyone instantly. Undying does block this, but the burning trail deals damage continuously, so you will lose all your stacks within seconds. The burning trail won't be visible if you have special effects toggled off, so be sure to turn it back on before the fight starts. This attack has a ground indicator for the normal Ankou, but it won't have one for the blazing and demonic Ankou. Always watch out for when it scratches the ground or suddenly turns around. Occasionally, the charge is followed by this huge one-shot attack, which can only be avoided by being on the opposite side of the arena or directly behind the boss. You can also fire a laser beam, which gets wider the further you are away from the boss. This also leaves behind the same burning trail as the charge attack does. The demonic Ankou does not have a ground indicator for this, so pay attention. And move behind him directly when you see him channel it. It also seems like the beam is much wider on demonic. On demonic it can also spawn a set of 4 tornadoes. These will freely roam through the arena, one-shotting every player that touches them. They will change direction at random and very often, so do not be near them. These tornadoes will only spawn on demonic difficulty, and they will be spawned every time the Ankou has lost 200 million HP. Since so many of his attacks will one-shot you even in full tank gear, it is not possible to bait all his regular stomp attacks, as you will often have to run away to dodge things. Your team has to be aware of this. Once the Ankou is defeated, you will receive some sweet loot. Hopefully. That's all I have. Keep an eye on the description of this video to see if anything has changed in later patches. Special thanks to my guild and all the players from Codex who helped me learn this dungeon and figure stuff out. If you have any questions, please leave a comment.